Have you ever argued with your family about money? Or have you ever wondered why that new phone you really wanted was just sold out everywhere? Well, if you have, you are already thinking like an economist. So today we're going to explore the core ideas of economics, which is really just the study of the choices we all make every single day.
All right, here's our game plan. We'll kick things off with what economics actually is. Then we'll get into the one big problem it's always trying to solve. After that, we'll break down the 3 key ingredients of any economy, see how different countries mix those ingredients, and then finally, we'll pinpoint where Canada fits into the picture. Let's get started.
So, what even is economics? You might be surprised to find out that you've basically been practicing economics your whole life without even realizing it. Just think about your own family. You only have so much money coming in each month, right? You absolutely need to pay for things like rent and groceries. But then there's all the stuff you want, like new clothes or a video game. How does your family decide who gets what? That really basic question is where all of economics begins.
That conversation, the one about weighing what you need versus what you want and figuring out how to use the money you have, that is the very heart of economics. It happens in every family, and it happens on a massive scale in every single country.
So, if we pull back from the family dinner table, the official definition of economics is the study of how we as a society produce, share, and use all the goods and services around us. Everything from the food on your plate to the phone in your hand.
Okay, now let's talk about the single biggest concept in all of economics. Seriously, it's the one problem that every single person and every society has to deal with. And that problem is scarcity. I'm sure you felt this yourself. Maybe it was when concert tickets sold out in like 2 minutes. Or maybe it's like this cartoon, where the one game you want is impossible to find. That feeling of wanting something that just isn't available? Yeah, that's scarcity in action.
At its core, scarcity is just this constant tension. On one side, you have human wants, which are pretty much infinite. We can always think of something new we'd like to have. And on the other side, you have resources, the actual stuff we have to make things, which are finite, meaning they're limited.
So here's the bottom line. We will always want more stuff than we can possibly make with the resources we have. And because of that gap, we are constantly forced to make choices about what's most important.
Okay, so let's dig a little deeper into why our resources are limited. Economists like to break them down into 3 main categories, and they call these the factors of production.
The first factor is land. Now, this doesn't just mean a piece of property. In economics, land means all natural resources. We're talking timber, minerals, water, oil. They're the raw ingredients that the planet provides.
Second, you've got labor. This is all the human effort, both the physical work and the mental work, that goes into making things. It's the person building a house, the teacher in a classroom, the programmer writing code. And third, there's capital. It's easy to think this just means money, but it's way more than that. Capital includes all the tools, equipment, factories, and technology we use to produce goods and services. Think of the hammer, the computer, the entire assembly line.
So, if every society deals with scarcity, how do they decide what to do with their stuff? Well, every society develops its own system. You can think of it like a rule book for how to use its land, labor, and capital.
A good way to picture these rule books is on a spectrum called the economic continuum. On one end, you have a system where the government makes all the big decisions. And on the complete other end, the government takes a step back and lets individuals decide for themselves. Let's start on the far right end of that spectrum, a market economy. In a pure market system, the government's role is super small. Instead, it's the choices that individuals make, what they choose to buy and what they choose to sell, that drives the whole thing. In a market economy, the consumer is king. Individuals and private companies own most of the resources. So if tons of people suddenly want to buy electric cars, businesses will start making more of them. If nobody wants to buy CDs anymore, well, companies stop making them. It's all about supply and demand. Now, right in the middle of that spectrum, you'll find a mixed economy. And it's exactly what it sounds like. It's a recipe that combines ingredients from both sides. You get private ownership and individual choice, but you also have government involvement and some public control.
This table really breaks it down nicely. On the far left is a planned economy, where the government owns the resources and makes the big calls. On the far right is the market economy, where individuals do. And right there in the middle, in a mixed economy, they share that power. Honestly, most countries in the world today, including Canada, fall somewhere in this middle ground.
So let's bring this all back home.
where does Canada actually fit on this continuum? As you've probably figured out by now, Canada is a classic example of a mixed economy.
We can see this mix pretty clearly when we look at something called crown corporations. These are companies that were started and owned by the government. For a long time, both Air Canada and Petro-Canada were crown corporations. But eventually, the government sold them to private owners, which was a shift toward the market side of the spectrum.
But then, on the other hand, you have crown corporations like the CBC, which are still publicly owned. The thinking here is that their main goal isn't just to make a profit, it's to provide a service that supports and reflects Canadian culture, something a purely private company might not focus on. This is the public part of our mixed economy.
So let's just do a quick recap. It all starts with scarcity. We have infinite wants, but finite resources. To deal with that, societies create an economic system, which falls somewhere on the spectrum from fully planned by the government to fully driven by the market. And Canada? Well, it finds its balance right in the middle, creating a mixed economy that combines government oversight with individual freedom. All right, to make sure all this sticks, take a second to think about these two questions. First, what's that one core problem every single economic system is trying to solve? And second, what's the key difference between a mixed economy and a market economy? Thanks for tuning in.